humans of his earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to, isn't this a fun video to be making? I made a video about equipment for you all to have a look at, and then it appears no one was really interested in the equipment and everyone just wanted to talk about the timer. So I'm remaking the video. So this is totally off the cuff, 100% not prepped or anything. Today we're going to be talking about patch 3.8 and the equipment loadouts that are coming. I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk firstly about the timer, which I'll illustrate and I'll show you what I'm talking about there. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the equipment itself and what it does. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about the effects I think it's going to have in the game and why I think it's a positive thing overall, but there are obviously some issues with the implementation. Now, before we go any further, could you all just please calm the hell down, undo your knickers if they're in a twist, and take a deep breath. It's still a game, and it's not worth calling me the Great Satan about, which will probably happen in the comments section. I mean, I bought out a tank called the 047 and made a video review about it for Wargaming, and I got called out as being basically the reincarnation of evil. So I can't imagine how it's going to look in the comments section of this this one. Just please be careful and be gentle. Firstly, the timer. I'm going to show you what happens with the timer. You open up the thing and you get to accelerate, which I think sucks. Okay, straight off the bat, I'm on board with everyone else, and the forums are overflowing with very vigorous debate about whether Wargaming should be using lube or not when they put their timer somewhere. But be that as it may, the timer I think is a bad idea. That's not up to me, and I can't really do anything about it. The only people that can do anything about it is you, the humans, who can get on your forums and do whatever you want to do. I cannot do anything about it. I think it's a bit rough to actually pay the money for something and then have to wait 24 hours to get a hold of it. In fact, I think it's a little bit worse than rough. I think it's a bit of a taking the mick. But moving onwards and upwards, I just won't pay it. I'll wait 24 hours and then I'll do it with another thing. Secondly, I want to talk about the equipment themselves, the pieces of equipment themselves, and a few of the really interesting variations that are going to go on with the equipment. Centurion 7-on-1, you'll note you can get, and this is just something I want to show you quickly, you can get a gun rammer or you can get calibrated shells. If you have a look at the AMX 5120, which we just had a look at there, you can get ventilation or calibrated shells. Now that's because the AMX 5120 can't run a gun rammer, and they get access to vents. No other tanks get access to vents, which is just interesting in and of itself. You get 3 different columns. You grind up those columns. The first ones can be used via credits. You can unlock it via credits or sparts or spare parts, as they're called. And then the second ones you can only unlock via spare parts, which is all well and good. It's not a big deal. So if you actually want to get the spare parts, you leave equipment on all the tanks. Your equipment will be refunded as spare parts, and those slots will be open again when you run back in. If you want the credits from the equipment instead, sell the equipment now and you'll get credits for it, which you can then use to buy the equipment when the patch drops. You can't have it both ways. You don't get credits back and spare parts back and the slots unlocked. So that number again, to keep the slots unlocked and get spare parts back, which you can then use to unlock other slots, keep the equipment on the tanks, which is what I'm going to be doing. Because basically I can grind credits with premium tanks, that's no problem at all, but I don't want to be grinding spare parts on stuff. I want to have access to it, and just while you're grinding credits, you're also going to be making spare parts. So like, you're going to be better off grinding the credits than just grinding the spare parts. You can have the credits all that till the cows come home. I'm going to leave my equipment on. I know it feels confusing, but stick with us. We'll get through it. And I'm going to break down all the equipment from here on in as best I can. The actual equipment system is brilliant. I don't care if you don't like it, you're wrong. It's really good. It's going to make tanks specialized in a way that you couldn't imagine. Hey, you've got an IS-7. You're going to make it a particular style of IS-7. You're going to give it better armor. You're going to give it, you know, better armor, more repairs, all this kind of stuff, and make it a real tank. And someone comes along and says, well, that's cool because I went with penetration over my gun handling and my reload on my gun. And it makes me able to pen your IS-7 in a much easier fashion. And this is the kind of trade-offs that you're going to see all the way through. There's also some really cool bits of equipment. I'm getting ahead of myself again, aren't I? What I'm going to do is run through it all step by step. First one, you get -7% to reload time on gun rammer and 5% to penetration with any shell. You're going to notice it's 7%, not 10%, and you can't run vents, which just coincidentally is going to give you 5%, which is probably going to equate to about 2% in terms of pure raw increase in your reload speed. So you're dumping across the board about 5% to the damage per minute of every single tank that could run a gun rammer. And that's a good thing because they are making the game a lot sturdier. Your tank's a lot sturdier and they're making it harder. Even if it's only 5%, it's harder to put that 5% damage into the game. And it's going to hopefully allow you to live just a little wee bit longer. You also can't take the extra penetration and the reload at the same time. So it's going to allow you to specialize and pick depending on what your tank has going for it. If you're in a Centurion 7 Mark 1, you've already got really good penetration numbers on your APCR shells. You've got the L7A1 105mm and you've got 255mm of pen in that tank. So you've got no qualms whatsoever. If you are in fact in the T54 and you're running the gun that I run, the 100mm D10TC, you've got 201mm of penetration, but you've got 8.97 rounds a minute, which is just bloody Jim Dandy. So you're going to take the extra penetration to the shell and you get it up to 211mm of penetration. That's an extra 10 mils of pen. That's bloody handy. And if you run the 290mm gun, you can get it up to 230mm of pen. And you're starting to see also why the equipment changes happened to some of the mediums at tier 9 and 10. I'll point you to one in particular, and I know I'm jumping ahead again here, but let's just be honest, this is how I work. My head works. Enhanced armor, plus 5% to hull and turret armor. Imagine if they hadn't have nerfed the T62A's turret armor. Imagine if you had that in its current stand and you put another 5% of turret armor on top of it. And you had your extra 5% to penetration with any type of shell on top of the 330mm of heat you already had on that. You can see where I'm going with this. In a vacuum, those changes to mediums probably looked a little bit odd, but I've known this kind of thing was coming for quite some time, and it made perfect sense to me because you would have had tanks like the Centurion 7 Mark 1 running the L7A1. You would have 200, I think it was 265 on the Cent 7 and 1 before, which would have brought it up to standard rounds of 280mm of penetration on its standard ammo. And that would have been bloody ridiculous. So they changed that for the new equipment system coming in, so it actually looks and makes a lot more sense. Something else that we can move on here and have a look at now as we climb up across the bottom, as we go across the bottom, vitality. So previously you wouldn't have had any opportunity running an IS-7. You would have run your vents, you would have run your gun rammer, and you would have run your vertical stabilizer because the gun handling sucked nuts and you couldn't get it to hit the broadside of a barn at times and it really frustrated you. So you ran gun handling. You couldn't run wet ammo rack because you only had 3 slots and basically wet ammo rack was not worth trading off any of the other things. Well, now in the vitality section of the tank, you get to protect your ammo rack. Or if you're running a grill and you get hit with HE all the time and you keep losing crew members, or you're running a KV5 and your KV5 driver keeps dying because they keep shooting the bloody turret, then you might run the plus 10% to crew protection. And it allows you to actually use equipment that's going to help your tank for more than just damage. This whole vitality section that you run down, 5% to armor, which is great for an E5. An E5 has a trollish armor profile. It's strong, but it's not super strong. This will tick it up just that much, and it's kind of a tank that's right on the borderline of having a strong armor profile, but there's parts of it that are just missing. This will really help an E5. It won't help an SP1C whatsoever. It will just, armor's no good for it. It doesn't have enough anyway. It'll use the 5% to hit points there. But down here you have specializations of improved optics. Well, an E5's not going to get a whole lot out of that. It'll help a little bit at times. You'll probably run the Camo Net, but the SP1C can run improved optics there and get 10% to view range and be really, really effective with that. And it's already got camo coming out the wazoo. you see there's specializations all through this, and there's the ability to actually pick odd builds for your tank. And I find that really interesting. I find that to be a much better change for the game. And I just don't want to get bogged down in talking about this bloody timer, because I think we're missing the part where, sure, there's parts of the patch we don't like, but I'd rather talk about the positives of it. First row, I mean, something else that I need to mention is the Camo Net. Massive change here. Absolutely enormous change. The Camo Net now works. It gives you half the value of the Camo Net while you are moving. So it's become something that is actually worthwhile getting if you are running a tank destroyer that has problems with small gun traverse either side of the gun, like the Toaster or the T25AT or the T25. I mean, you used to run a Camo Net on that and you'd turn the gun either way to track a target. You'd break the Camo Net because your tracks would move because your gun traverse was so low. Well, now you'll get half of the value of that Camo Net. And obviously, if you're running a tank destroyer, you get half of the value of the Camo Net at 15%. So you get 7% of the Camo Net, rounded down to 7. I don't know why. But you get the full bonus of 15% when you're not moving and you're completely stationary. So there's actually value in that. And it's going to bring tanks like the STB one, for instance, as a medium at tier 10, has base view range of 270 meters. It's actually going to make that far more valuable than it used to be, because you can't run binoculars anymore. Binoculars in the current incarnation of the equipment loadout just doesn't exist. So you cannot run it. So it's going to actually make tanks that have a really good base view range important within the game, because their base view range is an asset that other tanks don't have, and they can accentuate it maybe with extra optics and all that. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this over so many videos. And I just want to point out that there is no other human in the world that should be more disappointed that they've changed the equipment system, because I've got 500 videos up on YouTube right now, and all of them, equipment-wise, just got rendered obsolete. And I'm going to have to go through and talk about all kinds of things with all tanks over and over again. So if you think you got it bad, stick it up your, not happy. Okay, moving onwards. Enhanced gun lane drive or supercharged. So much nuance now. Supercharged is really important because different types of ammo have different types of shell velocity. Not only do they have different types of shell velocity, they have different types of penetration over distance. Armor-piercing ammunition loses less penetration over distance than armor-piercing composite rigid, or APCR. Heat doesn't care because heat is a chemical weapon. It's super-powered, superheated injection. Don't worry about it. But heat, you don't have to worry about it. Isn't going to be such a loss to this. Shell velocity is really important too. It means that the target has to be led by less. So if you've got an accurate gun like a grill, and even better, a Leopard 1 that fires APCR as a stock standard round, and you've already got excellent aim time on that gun, and you don't need to improve it at all, you can just accentuate your strengths with this. And you can now make your bullet get there quicker, and it will penetrate better when it gets there. If you're going to be running an IS-7, you're going to go for this, the enhanced gun lane drive, because you're not going to be doing a whole heap of sniping. You're going to be up close and personal. So you can actually run enhanced gun lane drive and vertical stabilizer. I believe these stack now. Okay, I believe they stack. I cannot absolutely assuredly tell you they stack, but that is my belief, because vertical stabilizer is the next one up. So there you go. That's a little bit of an interesting nuance straight away. This one is just brilliant. Enhanced armor or 5% to vehicle hit points. For some tanks, enhanced armor is going to be an absolute must. For other tanks, it's going to be nigh on pointless. I mean, some tanks just don't have enough armor. The Grill is not going to have enough armor to really make a big difference. I haven't looked at the raw numbers, but some parts of the Grill may be then unhittable for big damage from medium tanks with high explosive, which I use. Oh, just out of interest, and this is just brilliant. I'll show you. We'll open up this one. We'll choose the protective modules. Oh, hang on, where are we? What are we on? Let's get back to the Sense 701. I'll show you something really cool that is going to be great for me. I really, really like this, and this is something that I hadn't really thought about. Okay, Hesh with 215 millimeters of pen, you get the extra 5%, and your Hesh goes up to 220 millimeters of penetration, which I think is just freaking awesome. I'm really, really excited about that. It means that and this is another one of those trade-offs with the FV215B183. 7% reload is really important in that tank. It has the slowest loading gun in the whole freaking game. But anyway, long story short, in T10, you get 5% to penetration, and your Hesh shells suddenly penetrate 231 millimeters of armor, which is really good because at 231, that's going to be above the tipping point for a lot of medium tanks that you can hit and all kinds of other vehicles that you can hit with Hesh, which is the big damage. So you may actually get more damage per second. You may get more effective damage at a 5% to penetration than you do out of 7% to reload time. God, I am talking a lot. Let's move right along to the engine accelerator. Now, the specialization is probably less exciting than others at the top here, but this one's actually pretty cool. Improved control will give you 7% of the top traverse speed on the vehicle, which is very, very cool. And note the top traverse speed. So if you're grinding it, it's going to give you a 7% buff when you get it stock with stock crew skills. And it's also going to give you the same 7% buff. So you might have 20 degrees of traverse when you start driving it with 50% crew. And by the end of it, you may have 40 degrees of traverse when you start driving it with 50% crew. So that 7% will go to both those things, right? We clear? This has gone on so much longer than I thought it would. And engine accelerator, 7% to reaching top speed. Okay, so you might have a tank that is quite good at top speed, like the IS-7, again, has a 50 kilometer top speed, but it gets there quite slowly because it's obviously going to move a whole heap of tank. Top speed may be really important to you then because you're using it as an assault tank or you're playing in clan wars, and part of your whole gear is to get to a spot on a map first. You're going to run the engine accelerator. If you're running a tank that struggles with traverse, like a T95, you're going to run 7% to top traverse speed. So it's going to change for each tank, which is brilliant. Before, the IS-7 and the T95 probably ran the same bloody things, if they could. I mean, one doesn't have a turret, so it can't run a vertical stabilizer. But the T95 would have been running your vents, your gun rammer, before it run anything in the third slot. Now that's not the case. You're gonna get differentiation. Like it. Really tough one. Top line here is vertical stabilizer, 15% to accuracy during movement and turret traverse. If you're on a tank destroyer, let's have a look at that. It is still going to help you with your accuracy, but you don't have the turret traverse. So you quite often will spend a lot of your time without moving your tank at all, which means you may go for this, the -5 dispersion at 100 meters, but that's not such a big deal for you in a tortoise because your dispersion is already off the charts good. Where it will come in is if you're running a 183 and you then have to make some really hard choices because that's excellent for your accuracy on movement and turret traverse, but 0.20 is a big dip in your dispersion over 100 meters with the massive gun and may actually be better for your effective damage per minute. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Enhanced tracks. This one looks really strong. 25% repair speed if you've got the perk. With heavy tanks, it gives you 24% already at tier 6. That can get you up to about 50%, 49%. And then you run provisions, which will give you 15%, 10% to speed of module repairs. You can get that to 60%. That can mean that your ammo rack, your gun, your optics, all those kind of things are repaired at like 60% speed. It's really, really quick. And your tracks and everything. Or you go for something like this, which means you are automatically going to get repair of suspension from a critical condition to a standard condition every time, which means you're not going to get tracked, but your other modules aren't going to repair 25% quicker. For a medium tank, you'd probably run with the enhanced tracks. You may even run them for a heavy tank, but I'd be, well, for a tank like the Grill or the KV5 we mentioned previously, or any one of those, you may want to run the toolbox because you're going to take a lot of module damage. Leopard ones, they suffer so much module damage. And that's a big, big plus. And then this is probably the one that I think at the top is so straightforward. You have to just do maths and see which one's best. I haven't done that at the moment. Whether 10% to your adrenaline, say over time, is better, or a 10% of your adrenaline cooldown speed is better, or 15% to the duration of the consumable is better. But that's up to you guys. So that's the equipment. I think it's better for the game overall. I think the implementation may be a little bit of a punish, and I certainly don't agree with the acceleration idea. I think that's just rough. And all I can say is that I don't know if it's written in stone or not, but it's going to be a tough one for Wargaming to sell to anyone as anything other than, you know, a grab at your gold. You can just wait, just take time, wait, be patient, wait a couple of days and don't spend your gold. That would be my advice if you're not happy with it. And that's completely up to you, the human who is running the show on your iPad. But this update has been so overdue. All anyone ever ran was the same vanilla setup with a slight variation on a theme. And if you've ever played any other games, you'd know, like World of Warships, there are different builds for the same boat that make the boat perform in completely different ways. And I mean, you can run a build on the 183 that will give you fantastic penetration all the way through and accuracy on the shot, or you can run a build that's going to get you more shots and better accuracy with the actual gun itself while you're moving the turret and such, which will allow you to probably brawl better. That's 100% true. And these are just these lovely. I mean, you can have 5% more armor on the 183, which is pretty strong. Or you can get another 100 hit points, 90 hit points, which is also really big. Like, how many games have you lost by someone being able to roll a full round on you at 400 when their alpha is 400 and they roll 400, and if you had 490, you would have lived through the shot? That's massive. I'm Bushka on Blitz. I hope you guys liked that video. I think it's a really important video to make, and I know it takes a long time to get through, but you know what? I think it was important enough to take 23 minutes. I love you guys. Be gentle in the comment section. I don't make the game. I just talk about it. And if it seems like I'm too positive for you, well, maybe it's because it's just how I am. I'm an old man who's been around for a while, and I've learned some patience, and I've learned to deal with adversity in a different way. I've just, you know, when you have to deal with a lot of things in life, playing a game and waiting a day for an extra row of equipment isn't going to boil my socks. I don't think it's a good idea, but it's not going to freak me out too much. You know, there are problems in the world, and that's not one of them. Until next time, humans, look after yourselves, look after your families, and stay safe on the battlefield.